Alrighty, before we start today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout to our sponsor, and that sponsor is our good friends over at Ether Diamonds. Ether Diamonds is the world's most sustainable diamonds and the only diamonds that are actually good for the planet. Ether creates the world's first positive impact diamonds made from air through a process that removes harmful air pollution, captures the carbon from it, and retasks that carbon to a higher purpose in their one-of-a-kind diamonds. These are 100% real diamonds with a real impact. In fact, every carat of Ether Diamonds offsets your personal carbon footprint for over a year. To learn more about these revolutionary diamonds made from air, visit their website at etherdiamonds.com and follow them on social media at Ether Diamonds. All of their social media sites and their website will be down in the description below. All right, let's get the episode started. Hey guys, it's JJ Peters. Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP pod for short. Whether you're listening on the audio platform or a video platform such as YouTube, we can't thank you enough. Now, if you're listening on an audio platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff, don't forget to rate the podcast if you have not. It would be greatly appreciated. And also, if you're watching or listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe if you have not. Feel free to comment, like any of the videos that you have not already. And again, don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so you'll be updated when we release new videos. On today's Sports Town Podcast, before I forget, we're still doing the Giannis City Jersey giveaway. Now, basically, it's pretty simple. All I have to do is follow us on Instagram at sports_podcast, and there'll be up to 3 or 4 entries. I won't tell you all because of the timing. It's going to take a while to tell all you, but again, there's up to, I think, 4 entries. So don't forget to fill that out. And again, it ends on August 31st at 1 a.m. Eastern Time. So again, check that out. It's going to be great. It's a Giannis City Jersey giveaway. So if you're a huge Bucks fan or just a huge fan of the city jerseys in general, it's really cool. So don't forget to check that out. On today's Sports Town Podcast, we're back to having 2 great interviews. The first interview, we have Anthony Kay from the Sports Fluent podcast. He talks about a lot of things in sports, but mostly the Olympics. We haven't talked about that yet, so we get to talk about that. I know it's a little late, but I was finally able to get someone on. We also talk about the CFL. We haven't talked about that yet, but the season just started there, and he's actually in Canada right now, so it was a really cool cool interview. And then he talks a little about the NHL. So again, all of his information will be down in the description below. And then, of course, don't forget to follow him on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter at sports_fluent. And then we have, and of course, you can listen to him wherever any podcast you can find podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. And then we have another great interview. We talk about some baseball with the Take a Pitch podcast. Those guys were great. Again, all the information for them will be in the description down below. So go check them out. It was a great interview. We talked about the season, like Buster Posey, why he's been so good. The Brewers and the Giants have surprised a lot of us. It's just there's a lot of surprising things in baseball this year, so that was a great interview. They also have some merchandise. Again, all that will be in the description down below, so go check that out. And of course, I think that's about it. Again, so yeah, don't forget to check them out on Instagram and Twitter at Take a Pitch. And then, of course, you can also find them basically where any type of podcast to listen to, excuse me. And as always, we have the Sports Lightning Round, questions from Instagram, weekly poll question, highlight of the week, and much more. So we got everything going. Let's start the episode. And of course, before we start, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Facebook at sports_podcast or on Twitter at sportsdownpod. Before we start today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout to our sponsor of today's video, and that sponsor is our good friends over at HelpYouFind.me. You're probably asking yourself, JJ, what is HelpYouFind.me? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Peter Sanchez, the founder, creator, and owner, was originally worried about his daughter and his mom always asking him for his travel details. HelpYouFind.me was initially created for collective peace of mind. 48 hours. These are the most critical moments to find you in the event of an emergency, or worse, waiting for the legal process to access your important history information, which can take up to weeks upon weeks upon weeks. With HelpYouFind.me, you have your own secure and encrypted digital If I Go Missing file that can give you your most trusted people access to virtual information much sooner than the authorities. Each person you share with that has its own access rules, and everything is completely encrypted. Not even HelpYouFind.me can access it. This puts you in total control of of your data. You can also update your location, submit photos, screenshots, and post random information or notes on the go. It's as easy as texting with a friend. To find out more information, go to helpyoufind.me. Also, don't forget to use the promo code down low in my description. If you use the promo code STP2021 to get 15% off your first order. Again, that promo code is STP2021 to get 15% off your first order. And go to, if you want more information, go to helpyoufind.me. And again, I'll put the link down in the description down below. All right, let's get back to the show. Alrighty, it's time for our weekly poll question. You can vote every week on Instagram and Facebook at sports_podcast or on Twitter at sportsdownpod. Now we have our typical two questions, and the first question is Joel Embiid the best center because he just signed his massive extension? Overwhelmingly, you guys said no. You probably think Jokic. I can agree. I can understand that. I don't necessarily agree with it because I do think Joel Embiid is the best center. He would have won the MVP if he wouldn't have missed 21 games. If he would have missed half of that, maybe if he would have missed 14, he probably still would have won the MVP. But again, thanks for voting. You can vote every week on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And the next question is, did the Jaguars make the right decision by letting Tim Tebow walk? Now, overwhelmingly, you guys said yes, they made a huge mistake. I actually think they didn't make a mistake. I think it was a smart decision. I understand Tim Tebow is Tim Tebow. He sells a lot of tickets, all that stuff. He's just not a tight end. And he hasn't played in, 6 years? So it's just not necessarily possible. Even though I don't mind Tim Tebow as a player, I just didn't think it was going to work. And maybe if he would have done that, 6 years ago maybe, or 8 years ago, it would have worked. But it's just the ship has sailed, and we'll see what ends up happening. He'll probably end up working at SEC Network again or something. But again, thanks again for voting. You can vote every week on sports or Instagram and Facebook at sports_podcast or on Twitter at sportsdownpod.
This is the highlight of the week.
You have the timeouts.
Howell rolling out, wants to throw it back, didn't have the time to. Howell whips it, and it's tipped, and it's juggled, and it's Connor! Jamari Connor, did he put it away?
Alrighty, what a ending to the North Carolina and Virginia Tech game. Of course, Virginia Tech pulls off the upset, but what an interception by Jamari Connor as Virginia Tech upsets number 10 North Carolina 17-10. Most likely Sam Howell is no longer in the running for the Heisman. Yeah, I guess he could come back and play really well the next 11 games, but they need to go 11-1 pretty much, or at least 10-2 and have some type of Heisman moment. He definitely did not look like a front-runner Heisman. He'll probably be a top 5 pick in next year's draft, but that's a really bad loss, in my opinion, for UNC. But again, what an interception by Jamari Connor. Makes one of the biggest plays Virginia Tech gets their first upset since 2016 or something. So again, crazy. And again, what a play. And of course, Jason Benetti and Andre Ware were on the call as Virginia Tech knocks off North Carolina, number 10 North Carolina, 17-10.
The STP Sports Lightning Round. Your biggest sports stories in the world this past week.
It's official, Texans fans. Tyrod Taylor has been named the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans for the foreseeable future. The 12-year veteran spent the last 2 years with the Chargers and has been with the Browns before that. Houston Texans head coach David Culley told Sarah Bishop of ESPN that Taylor will be the starting quarterback going into Week 1 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. With all the news concerning the 3-time Pro Bowler Deshaun Watson, the Texans had no choice but to start the former Raven, Bills, Browns, and Chargers QB. It's been a rough year for the former Clemson product, Deshaun Watson. He requested a trade from the Texans in January, but then very soon was accused of sexual misconduct and misbehavior by 22 other women. Watson has yet to be suspended, but is currently on the commissioner's exempt list. It is still not clear whether Watson will suit up versus the Jaguars on Sunday. The 2015 ACC Player of the Year is still on the Texans roster, but it's still up in the air whether he'll be on it by the time the trade deadline comes up. There have been multiple reports that say the Texans are trying to move on from him, but teams are still scared of the legal problems that Watson has. Tyrod Taylor has started 47 games in his career and has thrown 54 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. He also has thrown for 9,770 yards and has been in the league since 2011. He was drafted by the Ravens in the 6th round of that same year's draft. The 32-year-old was the starting quarterback for the Chargers last season, but the doctors accidentally punched his lung with a needle and was out for a few weeks. When he returned, the eventual Offensive Rookie of the Year was playing so well that the Bills decided to ride with the hot hand. Taylor did not start another game for the rest of the 2020 NFL season. The Texans are expected to have a rough season and could have the #1 pick by the end of the season. Although Taylor is a better quarterback than fans give him credit for, and maybe Houston could be a lot more competitive than people expect them to be this season. In late July, Texas and Oklahoma decided to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC, shocking the college sports world. However, both schools do not want to leave until 2025 when their contracts with the Big 12 end. If they were to leave the Big 12 before 2025, they would owe approximately $80 million. Since then, the Big 12 has tried to find 4 new members to join the Big 12. A few weeks ago, the ACC, Big 10, and Pac-12 decided to form some sort of an alliance starting in 2025. With everything that's happened so far, that left the Big 12 as the odd conference out. In early August, the Pac-12 said they would not bring any other new members in the conference. The Big 12 then decided to try to invite more teams to replace Texas and Oklahoma. With the news of UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston wanting to join the Big 12, they would have to let the AAC know 27 months in advance. The AAC could be in trouble if 3 of their top schools leave for the Big 12. BYU is not in a conference through football and could join as soon as next year. However, in other sports, they are in the West Coast Conference and would have to let them know before leaving as well. The Big 12 could get all those 4 teams before 2025 and could have 14 teams in the conference. The Big 12 wants teams that have rich football traditions and have a great fan base. All 4 schools that are submitting applications have all of those requirements. If the Big 12 gains those schools, they will have 12 schools for the first time since 2010 before Colorado and Nebraska left to join the Pac-12 and Big 10. It's going to get pretty crazy in the next few weeks in college sports in the NCAA. LaMarcus Aldridge is coming back. The 36-year-old veteran is coming out of retirement and will resign with the Brooklyn Nets. The deal is reportedly worth $2.6 million over this season. Aldridge retired suddenly last April because of an irregular heartbeat. The former first-round pick in the 2006 NBA draft played with the Nets for 5 games and started in all of them. Before that, he spent 5.5 years with the Spurs. He was drafted by the Bulls originally with a 3rd overall pick, but was immediately traded to the Blazers very quickly. The 7-time All-Star played with the Trailblazers for 9 seasons before signing with the Spurs in the offseason of 2015. The news was first reported by ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. This is what Aldridge said to ESPN about his sudden retirement. "My heart had never been out of rhythm in a game, and then it was out of rhythm for the Lakers game, and I was just off and it had no energy. I just couldn't feel myself going. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I retired in April based on what I believed was the wisest precautionary decision for my personal health at the time. But further testing and evaluation by several top physicians has convinced the doctors, myself, and the Nets that I am fully cleared. The Nets are stacked and are the heavy favorites to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals and also have a great chance of winning it all next season." In other NBA news, the Nets have signed veteran power forward Paul Millsap. The deal will be for 1 year and will give Millsap a chance of winning his first ring. The move also brings more veteran experience for the Nets. For the first time since 2014, NHL players will be able to participate in the 2022 Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, China. As an agreement was made with the NHL, the NHLPA, IHF, and the IOC on Friday to allow players in the NHL to participate in the upcoming Winter Games. The last time the players participated in the Olympics was in 2014. They could not come to agreement in 2018, and therefore no players were able to participate. Powers such as Canada finished bronze, while the U.S. failed to medal for the 2nd straight Winter Games. Luckily, the agreement has an opt-out clause for the NHL. The opt-out clause runs through January. The opt-out clause allows the NHL to not allow its players to go if COVID worsens or games are canceled because of COVID, and they think they need to reschedule the games around that time. The 2022 Winter Olympics begins February 7th and runs through February 22nd. Since 1998, the NHL players have been participating in the Winter Games. The new CBA deal in the NHL also allows players to participate in the 2022 and the 2026 Winter Olympics. Players such as Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews will make their debut at the Winter Olympics. Connor McDavid had this to say about participating in the Winter Olympics. As a Canadian kid, your dream is to play in the NHL, and your dream is to play for Team Canada at the Olympics. I think that's always how it is, and I'm no different. The upcoming NHL season starts on October 12th. Bad news for boxing fans. Boxing legend Oscar De La Hoya has tested positive for coronavirus and will not be able to fight Victor Belfort. De La Hoya is currently in the hospital recovering from COVID-19 and might fight in late November. The former boxer has not fought since 2008 when he got KO'd by Manny Pacquiao. TMZ was the first to report the news of De La Hoya not being able to fight next Saturday. Triller's Ryan Kavanaugh later reported that another former fighter will step into the ring to fight Victor Belfort. The fighter will be former heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. Holyfield is 58 and has not fought since 2011. The California State Commission has not approved of Holyfield fighting. If California Athletic State Commission does not allow the former heavyweight champ to fight, they will move the fight to a different venue, most likely somewhere in Florida. The fight was originally scheduled to be held at Staples Center in LA. Holyfield has wins over legend fighters such as Mike Tyson and George Foreman. On the other side, Oscar De La Hoya went to Twitter and tweeted, wanted you to hear directly from me that despite being fully vaccinated, I have contracted COVID and am not able to fight next weekend. The fight is scheduled for September 11th and will be on Triller through pay-per-view. DeAndre Jordan has been traded. The former All-Star has been traded to the Pistons for 4 second-round picks and $5.78 million in cash. The Nets will acquire Jahlil Okafor and other players. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Pistons waived Jordan. Jordan is expected to sign with the Lakers once the buyout is complete and when he officially cleared waivers. He made the all-defensive team twice in his career. He is definitely not the same player he was back when he played for the Clippers, but he brings leadership and more size for the Lakers. LA now has 3 centers in Marc Gasol, Dwight Howard, and now DeAndre Jordan. The 2020 champs are also expected to play the 10-time All-Star Carmelo Anthony at the 5 as well. Jordan has been in the league since 2008 and has played now for 5 teams. He signed with the Nets in 2019 because he had a good relationship with both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. DeAndre Jordan, will try to win his first championship and has a great chance to do it with the 17-time champions. The third-ranked female tennis player in the world, Naomi Osaka, was upset on Friday by 18-year-old Lila Fernandez. Fernandez, before the match, was ranked 73rd and had never gone past the 3rd round in her young career. Osaka won the first set but ended up losing the next 3 sets, 7-6, 7-6, and 6-4. After getting upset with the 18-year-old, Osaka went to the press conference crying. She stated, "I feel like, for me, recently, when I win, I don't feel happy. I feel more like relief. And when I lose, I feel very sad. The last few months, the 4-time Grand Slam winner has not been herself. According to multiple sources, Osaka is dealing with depression and anxiety. Before the French Open began, the 23-year-old decided not to participate because she was dealing with mental health issues. She also did not participate at Wimbledon this season, but did take part in the Tokyo Olympics this past summer. Osaka most likely will take some time off dealing with mental health issues. The tennis world hopes Naomi Osaka gets better and maybe wins a Grand Slam in the near future." And finally, Lane Kiffin, the coach at Ole Miss, has tested positive for coronavirus and will not travel with the team to Atlanta as they take on Louisville on Monday night. Kiffin announced the news on Saturday morning. The head football coach at Ole Miss is fully vaccinated but still tested positive for coronavirus. According to the former Raider, USC, Florida Atlantic head coach, he is experiencing mild symptoms. The 46-year-old is in his 2nd year at Ole Miss. Last year, he led the Rebels to a 5-5 season. Kiffin stated that his team is fully vaccinated. He went on College Game Day on Saturday morning and stated, "I am disappointed to confirm that I have developed a breakthrough case of COVID and will not accompany our team to Atlanta. I am grateful to be fully vaccinated and experiencing only mild symptoms. So much so I debated over being tested, but I am relieved that I did. I'm proud of our program's commitment to vaccinations, and as a result, there are no currently other cases to report or team members to miss the game." Ole Miss is expected to beat Louisville on Monday night in Atlanta, home with the Falcons, and is currently a 10-point favorite. And now, on to our interview with the Sports Fluent podcast. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Anthony Kay from the Sports Fluent podcast. How's it going, Anthony?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I am doing great. Again, thanks for coming on the pod. I really appreciate it. If you want to talk before we start answering some questions, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about your podcast and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a couple of things on the go. I have the Sports Fluent podcast, which is kind of our main show, which is a weekly kind of all sports encompassing. But on our YouTube channel, also named Sports Fluent, we've got Monsters of the Midway, which is a Bears podcast, 6 Fluent Minutes, which is a Toronto Raptors podcast, and The Lake Show, which is a Lakers specific podcast. Plus, got so much going on. Fluent and Chill, which is a show I do with Chilltown Hoops 2 times a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, and we do a basketball show and an NFL show as well.
Oh, okay. That's cool that you have a Toronto Raptors show. I'm actually a huge Kawhi Leonard fan, and when the Raptors won the title, I was really excited. So, anyways, now as we start the show again, thanks for coming on. Do you want I know the Olympics have happened about a week and a half ago, and I really haven't talked much about it. I've kind of wanted to, but what did you think of the Olympics just in general this year?
Well, I'll give you in general the Olympics, I guess. So this year, I enjoy the Olympics. I have a family that is really into the Olympics, so we really get into it. My brother also works the Olympics, so we also had him there showing us some inside scoop of what was going on as one of the few people that got to be there because there was no spectators. I think that really affected the Olympics, not having fans in the stands. I think it hurt the Olympics maybe more than any other sport, because it's kind of that, once at every 4-year event and people really get into it. In general on the Olympics, however, I don't know if it's a bone to pick with the IOC or whoever's in control of this, but, I was mentioning to you earlier, it started with 43 events. Now there's 339. And, when you have events, and I'm not saying the people who do this aren't incredible athletes, but power walking, table tennis, 3-on-3 basketball, the list probably goes on a little bit. I think there's maybe 2 times too many events. I think if they condensed it and had maybe 150 events and really, created, a really condensed format as well, I think they get some of that viewership back. I felt like this year's games, I don't know, maybe it was because of COVID or the fans in the stands. I feel a piece of it is that there's just too much. There's too many events, too many things going on. And I think it takes away from people's focus.
Yeah, and I think, you said there's so many events now, and it's crazy because a lot of the events that you see, most of the time you don't pay attention until the Olympics, and there's just some that you have no idea, like some things you just had no idea that they were actually a sport. And I was talking to you earlier about skateboarding. You said you enjoy it, but it's not really an Olympic sport. That's why there's the X Games, and I can really understand that. But what do you exactly, or do you think? Let me rephrase that question. Do you think they should put skateboarding in the next Olympics, or just, get rid of it altogether?
It's one of those ones where I'm really torn, because what's the definition of an Olympic event? So I think we need to clarify that. And here's why I'm torn, because I really enjoy watching skateboarding. I think it's amazing. But should it be in the Olympic Games? I don't know the answer to that. It might be one of those cusp ones where, if there's room for it, let's put it in. And I think the reason they put it in is, well, you have snowboarding, which people pushed back on the Winter Games. But that's been a huge success. So, let me make a stand. I'll say no. I don't want skateboarding. I love skateboarding. I don't think it should be in the Olympics. But I think there's other things that need to go first. Like I said, the 3-on-3 basketballs. I think golf, right? That's just not something I personally feel is an Olympic event.
Yeah,
and sorry, I'm gonna add something to it here. I'm sorry to cut you off there before you start, but I think it also takes away from, the Olympians. Like, if you were to watch the Olympics, I want your focus to be on, this. Now in this case, we'll probably talk about Simone Biles in a second, but like the Simone Biles and you mentioned a swimmer earlier who kind of dominated. I forget the name. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but hopefully you can fill us in with that swimmer. But I think it takes away, because now you have professional golfers, professional basketball players, these professional athletes who are coming in and competing. And I think, if you look at the Olympics, were people watching Team USA basketball, or were they watching, the Olympic gymnastics team? What should they have been watching? Well, they should have been watching the Olympic gymnasts, because you don't get to see them very often. You see those basketball players, and I love basketball, but you see them all the time. You see them all year round, every year. You don't go out of your way, I think, to see some of these other Olympians, and I think it takes away from that, what it is, that amateur sport.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the one big thing, too, that didn't really exactly, or why I wasn't super pumped, and a lot of people weren't pumped either, was just because of no fans. And I think that's really disappointing. And hopefully there's fans at least for next year's Winter Olympics. That would be nice. But, I think you're right, too. And I think at the same time, the golf is an interesting one, too, because you say that it's like every week you see those top golfers, and it seems like almost every country plays golf. And I think you did point out something really good. Like, I think that golf is more of an Olympic sport that happens every week, that shouldn't happen every 4 years. Like, that should be in the Olympics. So I agree with what you're saying there. And of course the skateboarding thing, just because there's already the X Games, and surfing's another sport too that I don't know if should be added in the Olympics, but at the same time, you don't exactly watch surfing until the Olympics. So, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say. Now, you did mention recently.
I will say this. Sorry to cut you off, but I would say that, like, surfing and skateboarding, I would put them in ahead of, like, golf and tennis, right? Because both are things, again, that we see. There's a whole year of that stuff all the time. So I just don't feel it needs to be there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and yeah, tennis is another sport too that you don't really pay attention to in the Olympics, because, I mean, do we really care who wins the gold medal? Because, and plus this year there wasn't much of the big time, our tennis players this year playing, because of course, Roger Federer didn't compete. Just all these other players did not compete at it. Like, and Serena Williams wasn't in there, and just, it seemed like there wasn't as big a names this year in tennis. And again, tennis is like golf too, where you already see a plethora of every year, or every week. So it doesn't really, I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned it earlier. Simone Biles was kind of the big story of the Olympics. What did you exactly take out of the whole deal? Because it was kind of a hard situation to really understand. But what did you actually take out of the whole Simone Biles situation?
I felt that we forget sometimes that athletes are first and foremost human beings. Mm-hmm. And we just want them, we have this flashback to, like, Mary Lou Retton with the broken foot or the broken ankle or broken leg, whatever. And she goes out and she competes and she wins the gold. I saw people when Simone Biles came out and they were showing this clip of Mary Lou saying, "Oh, that's what an athlete should be." Simone Biles, whatever was going on with her, I think there were some family issues. I think there was a death in the family. There's some, I believe it's ADHD medicine. Like, I forget the name of the medicine that she's supposed to be on, but it's illegal in Tokyo, so she couldn't take it. So there was a lot going on with her. And for her to come out and say, listen, I'm not mentally kind of in a state where I can compete at my best, and for the betterment of the team and everything, I'm going to step away. People saw that as weakness. And my old school mentality was like, rub some dirt on it and make, just go. But then, when you think about it for a minute, you're like, you know what? I think it was just as brave of her to come out and say, I can't do this. And as fans, we want athletes to just, be these machines that just go out and compete and just forget about life. Just go compete and do what you're supposed to do. That's what you get paid to do, or that's why we watch you. And I get that. And we lose a sense of, the human aspect of it. And everyone who said she should have just, grinned and bared it, I asked, what if it was your kid? What if it was your kid that said to you, you know what, if I'm in a mental state right now where, and I'm not saying this to Simone, I'm just saying in general, I'm in a mental state right now that if I were to go out and try to compete, I don't think I could recover from that. I might fall into deep depression, especially if I lose. Or if I win. Like, I don't even know if it has to do with winning or losing. Would you send your kid out and say, I don't care, just go? I would say 90% of parents would say no. 10% would say, yeah, just go do it, I don't care. But I think the majority would say no. If you know yourself and you know that you have whatever mental health issues that you have that you need to deal with and you can't go play your best, then don't. Right? If she had a sprained ankle and said, I tried, I went out and I did a backflip, and when I landed, it shot pain through my whole body that made me want to vomit. Would you you'd say, okay, well, you're hurt, don't do it. Why is that ankle, why is that ankle more important than your brain, than your mental health? So that's why I definitely sided with her. Now, I'm not saying, I also don't want to go too far and say, oh my God, she's a hero, right? Oh, how courageous of this person to say I can't do it. Because you know what? I'd say put that into perspective too. She had an issue. She made the best decision for her. I applaud her for that, and we move on.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that people are dealing with that we have no idea about. And again, we didn't really know the whole extent to the matter. So it's kind of like if you go out there and, go on Twitter, and this is what I hate about Twitter. Mostly it's just people, trashing other people. And it's just like, there's just other things that we don't know that are dealing with. But again, we don't know the whole situation. So we really shouldn't comment on it if we don't know what's happening. So again, it was kind of sad to see, because she probably at the end of the day, she probably could be at one time the greatest Olympians ever, but it just kind of, we just don't know the whole extent. It's just kind of a situation that we kind of should just kind of back away from, I think. So
yeah, she knows herself, right? She knows herself better than anybody else. And if she felt she can't do it, then that's her decision to make. I'm not going to hold a grudge to someone who says, listen, I'm not at that point where I can do it. It's your decision.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, she's in control of herself. She can make the decisions that she wants to. So now as we're going to continue on the Olympics for a little bit, we go on to the U.S. men's basketball team, and they won the gold, but they kind of squeaked out a win against France. But it felt like if the U.S. didn't win a gold, we would be talking more about it, just because U.S. every year usually, or every other year, wins the gold, or every Olympics wins the gold medal. But do you think if U.S. wouldn't have won the gold, do you think possibly Greg Popovich would have been removed from the coach and they would have replaced him with someone else?
I think they would have, and I think it would have been a bad decision. And now, listen, Pop, I love Pop. I think he's, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Now, he's also into his 70s, and I'm not saying that, it's passed him by, but, someone gave me this, so I'm stealing someone else's line here, but they used a good analogy when they said, it's kind of like your computer software. There comes a point where it's still good, it still works, but you should probably upgrade. And I think Pop's getting close to that. He's not there yet, don't get me wrong. But if they lose, I think you don't want to blame the players. And that's the problem. No one's going to say, it was the player's fault. It's the easiest thing to blame the coach. And just think about any team. Who's the first person to get fired if a team underachieves? They don't trade all the players. It's typically the coach that gets fired in most cases. And they bring in a new voice and they say, this is going to change, the culture of our team. Even though in most cases it's that talent. In terms of Team USA, they got very lucky. One, I think KD just kind of took over and said, listen, I'm going to take us home. And the rest of the players said, here, just take us home. If you watch the game, he became that guy that took over the team. And they had enough talent that if they kind of gave one person a clear lead, that they were going to win. But I think Team USA struggles from something that the other teams don't. If you look at the other clubs, the other countries, they have a core of players that play together every kind of off season. A lot of them play in some other leagues together, the ones that aren't NBA players. They play on the same teams, whether it be in a Euro League or Russian League, whatever. And so with Team USA, you've got a bunch of players who are all in the NBA. They all play on different teams with a couple of exceptions. There's a few, but they don't commit to that summer, whether it's the FIBA, the World Championships, the Olympics. They don't commit to it. And if you go back, and I mean way back, the USA was struggling. First, there was the Olympics. I guess there was the Olympics where they boycotted. And then I think it was 80. What year was it? 1980. Where they weren't, and then in 84, they bring back this, team of college athletes who win the gold. Then 84, not that great. 92, the off-season stuff. And then 92 is the dream team. because they realized, oh, you know what? These other countries are sending professionals. We need to send a professional. So they create the dream team. Dream team wins the gold, and then they win the next one, I think, right? And then what happens, I think, around 2000, 2004, because they had won the gold again multiple times, I think the attention gets pulled away. And they say, okay, we'll just send players. We're fine. And they just threw a ragtag team together. Remember, I think it was LeBron's first Olympics, and they don't win. And I think, or it's the FIBA one too, they don't win. And so now they're like, hey guys, we need a commitment. I think the team was called the Redeem Team. And they said, we need you guys to, to say, hey, we're part of this for the next 8 years. And it's not all of them. It's not all 12, 15, but there's a core group of like 6 or 8. I think it was like Kobe, LeBron, Carmelo. There's a group of them. And they came together and said, okay, we're going to commit to doing this. And guess what happened, right? They come together, they play a little bit in the off season, they play a couple of World Champ, and now they're unstoppable again. And I think they were unstoppable. What happened now? Again, we started to lose the attention. We started to pull back. And now it was, I think that it was good that they lost those games in the exhibition games to France, to Australia, because it made them go, oops, hey, we can't just coast. We can't just rely on our talent. So I think more so than Greg Popovich, and sorry, I feel like I've rambled a little bit here, but more so than Greg Popovich, I think they need to get a commitment from some of those young guys to say, hey, we need you to commit to the World Championship and the Olympics. At least give us that 4-year commitment that you're going to do these events so that we can get you guys playing together and understanding. Because Olympic basketball is different, or international basketball is different. There's some rules changes that they need to be ready for, and I think that's what hurt them in the exhibition games. They were still getting used to those rules.
Yeah, and the rules too are similar to, or at least other countries, they play similar more to international, or they play not international. International plays more to college rules than the NBA, and you could definitely tell when the U.S. was, or the U.S. men's basketball was playing, there was a lot more. They weren't getting the calls they normally get, and again, it was similar to college basketball where everything's more of half court instead of full court. Like that was what international basketball is, and I think. And what I've also noticed is international basketball seems to be a little more tougher than the type of what the NBA runs. So it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, they have 3 rules. If I could jump in and say that there's 3 rules that I think really affected the U.S. Well, look, there's 2 things that are outliers, which is, superstars don't get all the calls. Right? Mm-hmm. That just doesn't happen. You're not going to get a foul because you made it look like you got fouled. They're not going to call that. And the travel, they are way stricter. There's no gather step, right? You get your 2 steps. Anything else that's travel, and you saw a lot of travel calls. But the 3 big rule changes are hand checking is still allowed, right? Which takes some of those players back. They didn't play in the 90s. So when we talk about 90s basketball and hand checking, that's still there. There's the defensive 3-second, which was huge. In 2001, the NBA got rid of defensive 3 seconds. And what it did was they wanted this to happen. It opened up the lane. And because a center, your 7'2" center couldn't just stand under the rim and contest and block shots. They had to get out of the key every 3 seconds. So it gave perimeter players an opportunity to drive and either get some great dunks, drive in a dish, whatever happens. That play now becomes more important because you can't do that. In international, you can have that 3 seconds. So the hand check in the 3 seconds, and then the goaltending rule. The second it touches the cylinder, you can then go up and grab it, even if it's still within that kind of invisible, infinite cylinder. Whereas in the NBA, obviously, you can't touch it if it's within that invisible cylinder. So I think those 3 things they didn't realize, because I saw a couple of them where they had a shot, it bounced off the rim, you'd see the international player go and scoop it out, and there would be this pause where they'd look and be like, hey, no, that's legal. Oh, okay. And they're already now running down the court. So there's a couple of moments like that too. So those are the things you got to be aware of as you're playing those rules.
Yeah, it's just totally different. And I think, too, at the same time, like I said, superstars, they didn't get the calls. And I think they were kind of wondering, like, this is just different. I think it took them time to get used to. And I think I noticed, too, Damian Lillard did not play very good, that I noticed. Like, I think he's the best point guard in the league, and he did not play well. I think mostly Kevin Durant kind of carried that team a little bit. And I think now we're realizing that Kevin Durant probably is the best basketball player in the world, or I think he's surpassed LeBron at least. But, I mean, I think Kevin Durant, again, carried that team. It's just, like I said, international basketball is so much different. And it just goes to show you that you have to have some type of team chemistry, as you were pointing out. And, again, it's a lot more tougher. The calls are different. It's a different game almost. So again, and as we know, a lot of the players that come out of Europe and come out of China and stuff like that, and Australia even too, they're actually really good. So like you said, Luka comes out of Slovenia, really good. Jokic comes out of Serbia, really good. It just goes to show you that international basketball is a lot better than what it was or what it used to be.
You
So
give the rest of the world credit. They're nowhere near where the U.S. is. But that gap is definitely has closed, and that's, I think, good for basketball. Right? It became such a global game, and if Team USA just went out and killed everybody by 40 points all the time, it loses some of its allure. So I think the fact that you can have upsets and these other teams are getting better, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think again, it makes the game more relevant, and I think what basketball is probably the second or third most popular sport in the world. So it just goes to show you that again, everything is just. The U.S. is head and shoulders is number one, but they're not necessarily head and shoulders as they used to be. So again, I know we would talk a lot about the Olympics, but do you think they need to add any sports in the Olympics? Like maybe add. I don't know. It seems like football is more of what kind of a few countries play it. But let me phrase that. Do you think the Olympics should add any other sports that they don't have right now?
I'm not saying no, but I'm saying until they get rid of a bunch of things that I think they have to get rid of, I don't even want to have that conversation. I don't know if you have any. Maybe you could throw out some, and I'll tell you yes or no. But like you kind of said, football. Football's an American sport. No one else really plays football, and they could put teams together, but it wouldn't even be fair, right? To play football. And you're probably not going to get a lot of NFL players because the risk of injury is so much higher. What other sports do you have? Soccer or football, right, depending on what part of the world you're in. They have the World Cup, they have the Euro Cup, they have their Super Bowl event every 4 years already, or they have their Olympic, I guess I should say, every 4 years already. So I know they do soccer in the Olympics too. Football, soccer, whatever. So I don't see. Is there something you can think of that you would put into the Olympics? I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Well, this is just kind of a shot in the dark, and I think I saw this on Instagram or something. Someone was saying that they should add motorsports in the Olympics, but you already have technically Formula One, which is all around the world. And I don't know necessarily. I just kind of thought of that maybe, but
a little IndyCar and NASCAR and
Olympics. Exactly.
They'll probably try it. I will say this. The Olympics has tried things and taken them out if they failed. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried. Probably Formula One makes the most sense because it's more of an international race than NASCAR. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that.
I would like to see a lot of the NASCAR drivers like Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson to actually go and abroad. I think 2020. I think the next time they can add something is in 2028, which would actually be in LA, so they would kind of be known. And of course, Kyle Larson I think is from Cali, I want to say. But so I wouldn't mind to see those. But you already have Formula One. I just can't think of any other sport. And again, football is more of just a one sport. They're trying to get internationally, but it's going to be a long time before people can actually get caught on with it. I just can't really see any other sports at the moment. So now as we go on to, I kind of want to talk more about, you said you're kind of into CFL a little bit, Canadian Football League. We haven't actually talked about this on this podcast, but I know the season just started. But right now, who is projected to win it all?
It's interesting with the CFL because there's so few teams. There's 9 teams in the league, and even the top team, which is right now Saskatchewan, the Rough Riders, I think would be my preseason pick, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. It's so with only 9 teams, everybody has a shot. I'm going to give you kind of a basketball reference. When we talk about Bill Russell, the biggest kind of knock is, well, there's only 10 teams in the league, so he had it easier. I kind of think the opposite. With 10 teams in the league, or in this case 9, I think any team has a shot. So I think Saskatchewan has a shot at it. I think, we thought the CFL was going to be something different this year because taken the year off because of COVID. And then they had this partnership with the XFL, and whatever they're working on didn't come to fruition. So I feel like they just kind of threw out the product and said, "Hey, let's do this." And I actually wrote a pretty long letter to the CFO of the CFL saying, "Hey, you have a problem. You have a financial problem, which is the CFL is one of the few leagues that is trying to make it with getting people into the stands." Right? If you look at the other major sports in North America, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the common denominator for their success and failure is TV deals. And then the secondary thing is how they get people to gamble on them. Let's be honest. I know sometimes people hear gambling and they're like, "Oh, no, we know that gambling is happening in all this sport." Listen, you take fantasy football. I guarantee you can find 1 million people who watch football because they're in a fantasy league, not because they were football fans. Or NFL fans. So that's where I think, I know I'm going off topic of the game, the CFL games, but I think that's what worries me about the CFL's future. But back to answer your question, I've got the Rough Riders as my early pick, and they're 2-0. So so far so good.
Yeah, I know. Was it the last time they had a Grey Cup? I think Winnipeg won, right? The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and I know they've won what? They've won the most, I know they've won a lot of Grey Cups.
It's gonna be. I think it's between one of those two. It might be Saskatchewan, but the west part, we call anything. You should let me give you. I'll give you a geography lesson in Canada. Anything that's not Toronto, which, ask anybody outside of Toronto, they hate Toronto because it's like, we look at it like the center of the universe. Anything west of Toronto, so I mean Manitoba, which is the next province over, is considered Western Canada. So it's like Toronto and then Western Canada. So Western Canada is really like traditional and into their CFL football, right? The Blue Bombers, the Edmonton, I guess Elks now. I mentioned the Calgary Stampeders, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the BC Lions. Those are actually really big draws, and so they're the ones that typically, the Argonauts in Toronto. If they're good, they have some people go to games. If they're not good, not so much. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's Winnipeg or Saskatchewan, but yeah, one of those two I think is your all-time leader, Grey Cup leaders.
Yeah, I've noticed too with the CFL, and what I've heard a lot is it has a more of an older demographic, and a lot of the younger generation isn't really appealing to the CFL. I've noticed that too, and I don't know what the CFL necessarily needs to do, because at one time they were really popular. I think back in the 80s or 70s and 80s when Warren Moon was playing, they were really popular. And of course, he won, 5 Grey championships, so he was dominant. And I feel like, it just doesn't seem like there's that younger demographic. And I don't think you said fantasy football, of course, is huge here in the US or in the NFL, but I didn't think the CFL had fantasy football, but that would actually be a great idea.
They have it.
Oh, they do?
They do, but I don't think they do a good enough job marketing their individual players, right? Like, if you think of fantasy football, and that's, I should mention, that's another segment of SportsFluent that we're starting, which is Fluent in Fantasy. So it's going to be a weekly fantasy tips on football. So if you think about it, if I name you, I don't know, or if you're a big fantasy football guy, if I say, "Hey, I need your advice. I need a running back," right? I'm thinking of picking Delvin Cook, David Montgomery, or Nick Chubb. Who should I take first? You probably know all three of those guys. Mm-hmm. If I were to throw out 3 CFL running backs, and I'm not you specific because you don't follow it, but to any Canadian football player or Canadian football fan, not many people are going to know them, right? Like, there's going to be a diehard core, don't get me wrong, but the fringe people, the casual fan, won't know 3 running backs from 3 different teams. Now, granted, it's not a very run-first type of play because there's only 3 downs, but they're not going to know that. And that's the difference where, you can go to someone now who plays fantasy who doesn't follow, the NFL football all that well, but they'll know those three very easily because, oh yeah, they're first, second, third round running backs. I need to know them. So I think they haven't done that. I actually, in my letter, I'm not going to go through, probably take too long to go through it all, but like, I gave them things like, hey, market the players, market that fantasy piece to it, add in-game gambling, whether you're watching at home or in the stadium where you can bet 5 cents on run or pass, 5 yards plus or minus, like just everything to get people actually watching the game. Because here's the funny part. Have you ever watched a full CFL game? It is so entertaining, right? Because the field is bigger. There's only 3 downs, so it's a lot of passing. It's high scoring. It's actually everything, that, some people will complain about the NFL that's, it's so slow and they're running the ball. And, now offensive has changed a little bit. They're throwing a lot more. But that was the CFL 20 years ago. Like if you look at Warren Moon, when you look at his professional yards, right, he's, on the up there at the top of all-time passing list, but some of that was in the CFL. It's because it's 3 downs. You got to throw. And when you have a field that's 110 yards, right, because there's that 10 yards in the middle. It doesn't stop at the 50. It goes like 50, 45, 50. There's 10 yards. The end zones are bigger. There's all these things. So there's more room to make those plays. And, the motion is different. More players can be in motion and kind of get a running start to the line of scrimmage. There's stuff that if you watch it, you're like, wow, this is really entertaining. It's different than the NFL, but still very entertaining. And that's where I say, if you give people a reason to watch, then they will, especially the younger people, they'll become fans.
Yeah, I totally understand. I totally agree. And yeah, because like I said, sometimes the NFL, there's teams where they'll still run the ball, and it kind of gets boring. And plus with the flags and everything, that just, that makes the game less. And when it's run and gun, it's a lot more exciting, a lot more, because I remember, was it in 2018 when the Chiefs played the Rams? I think it was 54-51. That was a super exciting game. And whenever you watch a Big 12 game, was it Oklahoma and Texas Tech? This is back in the day when Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes were still in college. But it was super exciting. There was no defense, but they were super exciting because, again, I think the scores were in the 70s. So,
look,
I totally
is it great? Yeah, is it great historical smash mouth football? No. But are you really likely to see a 47-42 game that you're going to be like, wow, that was a lot of fun to watch? That's entertaining? Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we kind of switch gears from the CFL, I know there was, and as you mentioned, there's only 9 teams, and the CFL is really small. And I know there was rumors before the pandemic where the CFL was trying to expand. Is there any chance within the next 5 years the CFL gets one new franchise, maybe?
I hope so. I think that, like I said, there's enough. Listen, I have an issue with the CFL, and they're doing it a little different this year. But the season's gonna blend into the NFL season again, and I think the best chance the CFL has, so one, to expand, and to be more, listen, for them to really succeed, I guess it depends. If I was running the CFL, I'd want it to expand to let all of North America really be something that they watch. So I would move it and start it, either right after, a few weeks after the Super Bowl or a couple of weeks after the draft, and make it like a summer league. Because, look, I know it's not ideal, but I'd like to have 2-way contracts where an NFL player who's trying to rehab or trying to prove themselves, a veteran guy who's trying to get back on a team, right, can go play in the CFL for the summer, show their NFL team what they're capable of, and then maybe get called up. When the way the seasons blend in, that's not going to happen. So that's the first thing I would do. I would move the games to Sunday. I don't know if you've looked in the CFL schedule. There's games Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And they still try to do it by calling it week 1, week 2, week 3. But I mean, if you want younger fans to start, getting into your game, you have to make some concessions for them. And the 2 things you need to do is make every game on a Sunday afternoon so that it could be a family event. So the older generation that still loves the CFL can take their younger, kids, grandkids, whatever, to that game. The other thing is, obviously, stream it. Stream it everywhere. Right? Get a deal with YouTube and just stream every second of every game, mic'd up, behind the scenes. Heck, coaches rants in the locker room. Just give more access and stream it and say, hey, this is how people, cable television is on a steady decline for years, because everyone's streaming. So tap into that. If you do that stuff, then you could put the league in a financial position where they could expand. Now, they tried to expand into the U.S. A while ago. It didn't work. But I think it was the same game with the same bad decisions. So, the expansion the timing was bad. you need to have the infrastructure first before you can expand.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like maybe make it more of a, I guess it'd be more of a, if it was a two-way, if you let players have a two-way contract, it'd be kind of like a minor league system. But, and then of
Now,
course,
I don't want to call it that because
Yeah.
then you'll diminish what the CFL is. And the CFL still is a very unique but professional football league. So you don't want to take away from that. I think, and that maybe is the reason why they don't want to have these two ways. But, you don't want it to be like seen as like a farm club or a summer league. I understand that you don't want to do that. But for the betterment of your league, I think it's fair to say, hey, we've now I think that's what they might be doing with the XFL. My idea for the XFL when they merged, the first thing I thought of actually before they merged, I kind of put it out there saying, hey, since the CFL hasn't played in a year and the XFL, it was right after I think Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson bought them. I said they should merge. Figure out a way. Now, here's the problem because there's the 3 down versus 4 down, but they should create like the North American Football League, right? And then that could compete with the NFL, and then leave the CFL as a 3 down unique thing where it makes sense. That I don't think that's going to happen though. So yeah, back to the thing. Yeah, so Sunday streaming, make it more accessible. I think they still try to treat it like it's the NFL, and it's not. And, I think that's why the XFL failed, is they thought they could just step in day one and be the NFL. No, you can't. The NFL's been around for 100 and whatever years. They've kind of earned their stripes. You can't just jump in tomorrow and do the same thing.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with the streaming and everything, because I think the MLB now streams live on YouTube, which is really fun to watch, because especially if you don't have cable or whatever. And then, of course, I understand what you're saying with the if you merge with the XFL and the CFL, maybe what you could do. I know the NFL used to do this back in the 60s when there was the NFL and AFL, and then they played in the Super Bowl, which was the champions of the NFL and the AFL. Maybe you could do that with the XFL, where the XFL champion plays against the CFL champion and make it the, I don't know, some type of bowl or championship game. So I understand what you're saying. That's a great, observation. And I think more people would pay attention to the CFL, but I just think the CFL should start merging. I guess you just merge into other cities of Canada or provinces or whatever. You couldn't really go back to the US because it'd be much different, but I see what you're saying there. So yeah. And again, this has been kind of a long recording, but do you have any other, or do you have one take about the upcoming NHL season that you kind of want to mention before we end the interview?
Oh, NHL? Oh,
yep.
Boy. I still really like the. Well, I'll give you two things on the NHL. I still really like the Tampa Bay Lightning. I picked them 2 years ago. I picked them this year, so they made me look good 2 years in a row because. I always like being right. I will tell you when I'm right. I will try to be very quiet when I'm wrong. But I'm actually really excited. This is the one thing I would watch because there's a city in the U.S. that I absolutely love. I spent a lot of time there. I'm very angry to this day that they lost their NBA franchise. I still call the Oklahoma City Thunder. I still call them the Seattle Supersonics. I refuse to call them the Thunder. And they've got their Seattle Kraken, and they did their expansion draft, and with the early success of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, right in their first year, they were in the playoffs. They were deep into the playoffs. This year, they made some noise again in the playoffs. I think the Seattle team has a great fan base. Just think of every team, whether it's the Seahawks, the Supersonics when they were there. Let's be honest, right? The Supersonics are gone not because of their fans, not because no one was going to the games, right? It was politics, it was money, it was the stadium, it was the owner. It had nothing to do with the fans. I believe their soccer team is the Sounders, right? I was there. So I used to do a lot of work in Seattle, and there's the hotel's called the iCloud. It's right across the street from the stadium. And I didn't know that there was a Sounders game on when I arrived the day before. There was one the next day. But I'm telling you, when that game let out, there was a sea of that lime green that it took over downtown Seattle. And so their fans are so passionate in Seattle. It's such a good, one, it's just a great city, but it's such a great sports city. So I think you're going to see a Kraken team that's going to get, I'm not a fan of the name, by the way, but you're going to see a team that is going to have a lot of support, is going to be really competitive right out of the gate if they followed anything from what Las Vegas did. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing next year in the NHL is how the Kraken developed. Like I said, because of the city and their ability to be a good team. Right? Typically, you get an expansion team, and you're like, yeah, we'll see you in 10 years if you're any good. But these guys can be good right out of the gate.
Yeah, and the one thing about the Kraken, I think it's a very interesting name. I was very surprised when they chose the Kraken, but I do like the colors. I mean, it's that two different kinds of blue and the black. I do really like the colors, and I do think eventually the NBA within 10 years will go back to Seattle. There's been rumors with the Pelicans and stuff going to Seattle, maybe just getting a new expansion team there. But I do like that would be interesting to see what the Kraken can do. And yeah, the fan base is huge in Seattle. And then of course Tampa Bay. I wouldn't, as you said, doing a three-peat wouldn't be really surprising, but it would be very interesting to see. As we end the interview, and you kind of were mentioning a few things you had in store for the future before we started recording, but can you tell us more about that?
Well, we have another new show actually starting too called Table for One, which is a game show that's going to be bring three or four of your favorite sports content creators, podcasters together into one kind of game to see who knows the most. So we're really excited about that, and that's going to be coming up. It's premiering in 3 weeks, but you can find all of it on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at sports_fluent.
Okay. All right. Again, thanks for coming, Anthony. It's been a great talk. Again, I've enjoyed talking about sports, and of course, we finally got to talk about the Olympics, so that was great. And again, don't forget to check Anthony K, the Sports Fluent podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. Correct?
Correct. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's sportsfluent.com.
Okay. Yeah, go check that out. I'll put a link in the description down below. Again, thanks for coming on, Anthony, and have a wonderful night.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to talk a little more about Ether Diamonds. Now, Ether Diamonds, they are some of the highest quality diamonds that you can buy and certified by the IGI, which is the world's largest independent laboratory for testing and grading gemstones and fine jewelry. Now, you're no longer stuck having to choose between mined and regular lab-grown diamonds, both of which harm the environment. Ether offers the only true sustainable diamonds on the market, requiring no ethical or environment trade-offs. They're the only guilt-free diamonds available in the world. To learn more about these revolutionary diamonds from air, visit their website at etherdiamonds.com and follow them again on social media at Ether Diamonds. And again, their website and their social media sites will be down in the description below. And now, on to our interview with the Take a Pitch podcast. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by the guys at the Take a Pitch podcast, Max Lutzker and Billy. How's it going, guys?
How you doing, man?
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some baseball. We've been talking a lot about basketball recently, so we really haven't got the chance to interview someone with a baseball podcast, but I'm really glad you guys came on. Before we start the interview, or before we start talking more about the baseball season so far, if you guys can tell us more about your podcast. I saw that you had some pretty sick hats. I'll put a link in the description down below for your guys' shop. But if you just want to tell us more about the Take a Pitch podcast.
I mean, all right. So basically, Take a Pitch is a podcast we started, 2019, January 2019.
Well, yeah, that's when my first episode was, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago now. So we came up with this idea. So I went to school for broadcasting, and so it's something I've always wanted to do. And I approached Billy with the idea because Billy and I were teammates in high school. We played ball together. Well, he played, I sat on the bench. And we came up with this idea where we talk about baseball in our daily life. It's pretty much all we talk about. So we're like, let's just set up microphones and do a podcast. Why not? And I think the exact words were, fuck it, let's do a podcast. Why not? And that's really how it became a thing. We did like a little mock podcast and took off from there.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. I saw the podcast over, I think it was through Instagram or whatever. But again, yeah, that was awesome. You guys responded back, so I was excited about that. Now, of course, the baseball season has been different than we expected. The fans are back and everything. It's actually a 162-game season. But we see how good the Giants and Brewers have been this season. And not many expected those teams to be that good. I mean, the Giants really haven't been relevant since 2014. But what have you guys thought about their performance this season?
Well, I'll say real quick that if there's anyone on earth that deserves the credit for calling the Brewers as one of the top teams, it's Billy. This I'm telling you, this guy is straight up on his, on his stuff. He knows it. He called Chris Davis's hit that broke the slump. This guy knows what he's doing. I think out of the four of us who do the podcast, Billy actually called the Brewers are going to be a top team.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry. What was that?
Yeah. I mean, they have great roster construction, top to bottom. So yeah, I mean, see it coming.
Yeah, I think most people, at least in the NL, thought the Dodgers and Padres would be the top team. In the NL Central, they kind of thought it would be the Cardinals. And of course, the Dodgers and Padres have had a pretty good season, but not quite like the Giants. And yeah, the Giants have not been relevant since 2014 when they won the World Series.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a down. Or I'm just really surprised. Of course, Buster Posey has been great. What have you guys thought about his performance this season?
Miracle. I mean, someone like him, he's you could probably say that he's top 10 catcher all time at this point, in his career. So it's not surprising to see him come back and have a rejuvenated year like this, especially, he took off the last year with, COVID and everything. And to get him off his knees and rejuvenate the knees and everything and get him back to being Buster Posey, that was probably huge for him. And, if anybody is going to do it, it would be Buster Posey.
Yeah, I mean, with Posey and the Giants as a whole, this is a team that doesn't rely on egos and stuff like that. And they're really well built. And Posey is probably one of the most, and as Billy said, that he's a top 10 all time. I still think he's relatively underrated in the grand scheme of things because the Giants have Joey Bart in the system that he's hyped up to be the next big thing. And Posey's only 32, 33?
34 almost.
He's not that old to where we're talking about he's retiring in the next year or so. So I feel like Posey's overlooked, and as a result, his fantastic season's been overlooked by so many people. And it's really nice to see a guy like Posey come back and do what he's doing, because for a while people were like, oh, he's kind of he's washed up and the ankle injury, all this and that, but this guy's still hitting, still playing well, and he's catching the majority of the games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like, Buster Posey, he's got 3 World Series rings. He's got an MVP. He had so much stuff accomplished for his first few years. It was just crazy. And I think he won Rookie of the Year back in 2010. So he's got everything that a baseball player wants. I didn't really think about it, but yeah, he probably is at the end of the day a top 10 catcher of all time. And yeah, he's just accomplished so much. And I feel like most catchers get worse after a few years. And like I said, he's 33, and that's rare to be that good. It's kind of like a running back in the NFL where they only have a shorter period of time. And of course there's good catchers like Yadier Molina is still really good. And there's other catchers as well, but it seems like catchers get worse as they age, like it's similar to a running back, but it's just been really fun. Looking at his stats, he's batting 330. It's incredible what he's done. Do you guys think with all the injuries to Jacob deGrom and the injuries to Fernando Tatis, and with what Ronald Acuna kind of had a good early season, but he's kind of cooled off, do you think Posey is the front runner for the MVP?
So this is actually a conversation we have almost daily. Posey is going to get some votes. He's not a front runner, I don't think. With Acuna's injury, with DeGrom's injury, and Tatis missing what, 38 games right now, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the front runner is either really Bryce Harper or Tatis. I think it's really a 2-man race here.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Max Muncy can be in it, and he's had a great year, and despite the fact that I irrationally hate him. I think the front runner has to be either Harper or Tatis in my eyes, at least. I know Billy's a big Bryce Harper guy.
I'm a big Bryce Harper fan,
yeah.
Yes, but I do think that the MVP. It's just so hard to not take Tatis as the MVP. He does everything. Like on MLB Network the other day, I saw something. They were like, if you could put one player at every position, who would it be? And I think the pretty easy, the easy answer would probably be Tatis. He's just so well-rounded. He's a 5-tool player, and what he does is insane.
Yeah, and I think, just Tatis. I think, he would be the front runner, and he would probably be unanimous if it wasn't for so many injuries that he's dealt with. But again, there's 162 games, so I feel like you can miss that. I think Mike Trout won the MVP one year, and he missed like 20 or 30 games.
Yeah.
So I can understand if he still wins the MVP. On the AL side of things, it's probably going to be Ohtani. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Vlad Jr. get a little more love, but like Ohtani does it both ways, and he's having success pitching. He's finding his way there. He walks the world, though. That's the only thing I have against him when pitching. Again, another conversation we have almost daily in our group chat. I'm just kind of, when it comes to Ohtani, I'm tired of everyone overhyping him. Like, yeah, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I have an Ohtani shirt myself. He's probably one of the best things to happen to the sport in a long time. But man, we don't have to dick ride him the entire time. It's crazy. I do think he is the front runner for MVP, though. I mean, you can't. He's what? 39 homers right now.
39 and a 2.93 last I saw ERA.
And stealing what? 15 bases, almost 20 bases. It's hard to argue with those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing it from both sides, I mean, and at an elite level, even if his pitching wasn't elite, which being a sub-3 is elite. Even if he was like around a 4, he's still going out there every 5 days and putting up decent numbers, enough, good enough to help your team win. And then he's on another planet offensively and hitting a home run like what it feels like every day. It's hard to argue with that.
And yeah, he's really good for the sport. I mean, again, it gets people talking about him, and like he can do so much. Like you said, I didn't realize how many stolen bases he had. Like he can do it all. But do you guys or how long do you think he can actually do this? Where pitching, hitting, doing all that stuff, it's probably going to eventually take a toll. It probably already is. But like, how long do you think it can actually last?
Personally, I would be surprised if he does anything even close to this anytime ever again. I think it's hard to, go to this level ever again.
Yeah, I think he'll either get to this level on one side or the other. I don't think he'll do it both ways, though. I mean, MLB deaden the balls, and they said it, so that way, obviously, his ERA is going to look better because the balls aren't flying at that like they have been. But on the other hand, he's hitting 39 home runs with dead balls. So only imagine if they put more cork in the balls, he's hitting 60, 70 regularly. I mean, this dude hits him, 470? With ease. I think that the fact that he's as a two-way player, 2-3 years of consistently good numbers. But nothing near this
27,
level.
So yeah, give him a few years where he's going to be good from both sides, but
nothing near this level.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to be elite.
Yeah, and the one thing I wish the Angels would do a little better would be to win more. I mean, of course, Mike Trout, I feel like, Mike Trout is still the best player in baseball, and yeah, Ohtani still isn't the best player in his team. It's Mike Trout, but I just wish that the Angels could get better, because imagine how popular Mike Trout would be. And Ohtani is already popular as it is, but I feel like Ohtani's more popular than Trout right now just because what he's been able to do. But I just wish the Angels could get better, because imagine how good they would be with two, like I said, if Ohtani wins the MVP, you already have 2 MVPs on your team, but nothing really else.
And let's not forget they have Anthony Rendon, too, who's been injured since they signed him to that, $230 million deal?
No, he played last year.
Mm-hmm. He got hurt a little bit, though. But last year, he underperformed, or there was some sort of something?
He had a nice year last year. It's just, the Angels are the Mets. They're the same thing. They're the little brother to the Dodgers. Mets are little brother to the Yankees. So they're always going to be, a little more under the radar,
And this is kind of my question, and I feel like Mike Trout really likes it where he's at. But do you think if the Angels within the next 5 years, he signed that big deal back in 2019, I think it was, or 2018? I think it was 2019.
I think it was 2019.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think eventually he will be traded out if the Angels can't succeed?
No. I don't see it happening. I think that it's hard to even have that discussion because you look at the Angels, you look at a franchise that's starved for, a star. They had Nolan Ryan, but they're not known for having Nolan Ryan. They had Reggie Jackson. They're not known for having Reggie Jackson. This is a team that throughout their history has had stars, and they moved them, and it never worked out for them.
Yeah, it's just sad to see because, like I said, the Angels' two best players, Mike Trout, Ohtani, they just can't seem to get that success. So hopefully it will turn out good eventually. Maybe a World Series, maybe just even a trip to the playoffs. Looks like it'd be hard enough for the Angels.
Yeah, playoff win for Mike Trout.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think he might. Yeah, Mike Trout hasn't won a playoff game, which is crazy, especially how long he's been in the league for. Got 3 league MVPs, 2 All-Star Game MVPs.
Yep.
It's disappointing. And there's another pitcher too that's been playing well this year, but yet he's out, and it looks like he might be out for the remainder of the season. Do you think Jacob deGrom ever returns back this season?
Depending on what happens with the doctors, if they find anything, because so far they have not found anything, that is alarming. So if there isn't anything alarming, then I think, when the Mets have gone 0-50 for the rest of the year, they'll get him in for a couple. They'll get him in for a couple of starts, and just to get him out there, get fans in the seats at the end of September, October, early, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, Billy and I are diehard Mets fans, and it's diehard, literally. It's painful. And you bring up Jacob deGrom, and we're sitting here
emphasize the die.
I mean, we sit here, you ask us that, and we just say internally, I really hope so. Because with everything going on and the stretch they're in right now with 13 against the Giants and Dodgers, and they've already lost their first 4. And probably, I think they're losing. It's so tough to sit here and just swallow this. Like, we are taking it on the chin and knowing that if Jacob deGrom is healthy, every 5 days we have a shot at even
a good shot at a win.
At a win. They're finally giving him run support this year. So even as a fan of baseball, you hope that he's back.
His own run support too.
Yeah,
over 400.
He's the only guy who drives and runs. But I want to say he comes back, but I'm not as confident as Billy is, I don't think.
And you were mentioning when Jacob deGrom, every time he steps on the mound, you were very confident when. That's kind of like as me as a Cardinal fan. Whenever Jack Flaherty is on the mound, we have a good shot of winning.
Mm-hmm.
And Flaherty with the injury was just really disappointing. That's why I think the Cardinals aren't as good this year. But just like I said, Jacob deGrom, very good pitcher. I just did a video on him recently that's saying, with deGrom possibly out, like the Mets, he might be done for the remainder of the year because, like I said, if they can't make the postseason, you won't see Jacob deGrom again. So, with how good he is, and if he didn't get injured so much, he probably would be league MVP. So, I mean, it's kind of a disappointment.
And the Mets might even be a playoff team too at that point. I mean, you're looking at a stretch where they're without Lindor, they're without deGrom. Carrasco's not really Carlos Carrasco. He's still trying to find his way. Javi Baez, who they traded for, got hurt. This is a team that's playing. I mean, nobody expected Kevin Pillar to get everyday action. Nobody expected Jonathan VR to get everyday action. This is a team that's been ravaged by injuries, and Jacob deGrom is quite literally the biggest blow because even with all that going on behind him, he was still out there shutting teams down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully sometime he steps on the mound before the end of the year because, like I said, you guys have a good shot to make the playoffs if he comes back. Yeah. But, we'll end up seeing. The Field of Dreams game just happened, and it looks like they're going to do another one. What did you guys think of the performance? Because it feels like the MLB made the right decision finally. You know, they finally made the right decision to make the Field of Dreams game. Had over 5 million viewers, the highest rating since 2005. So, what did you guys think about it?
It was awesome. You know, the whole thing. I'm actually not a huge Field of Dreams movie fan, but you know, I've seen it, and the opening ceremony was just chills. You know, it was an awesome thing, awesome game. Yeah, I mean, just all around, it was great for them to do, just to include that and bring the nostalgia of the movie back, and yeah, it was great, and I hope they continue it.
I mean, it was. I didn't even get to watch it. I was stuck at work, which sucked, and which brings us to a whole different issue of blackouts, which we get into in our last episode. But I mean, yeah, like Billy said, the opening, and it really was a ceremony. It was just some sort of event that it brought back so many feelings. Like my mom watched it after the fact, and she goes, and she's not even a baseball fan at all. She's like, she actually hates baseball because every game she goes to extra innings. She hates it. She goes, that was really cool. And I'm like, yeah, Costner to be there. I thought he was going to throw out the pitch, honestly. But just seeing everybody come from the corn and maybe I think walking through the corn, Brett Gardner found a swing of his old self. It was cool to see. It was definitely a performance. But as you said, MLB finally did something right.
Yeah.
But it would have been horrible if that game went to extras. That would have been so bad.
That game, though, was electric. Like, every score except for one was a result of a home run. And, of course, the field wasn't as long. But it was really exciting because I wasn't able to watch the game either, but I was able to watch the highlights. And probably the reason why Kevin Costner didn't throw out the first pitch, probably just too old. It's probably why he didn't throw the first pitch. But it was really cool, like the way they came out of the grass, or they came out of the corn, not grass. But it was really exciting. And I mean, like I said, they're going to do it next year, and hopefully this becomes an annual thing. And hopefully my Cardinals get to play eventually one time there. And that would be really cool, though, if they did that annually and stuff like that. It would definitely bring more viewership to the MLB, which is certainly what they need. But yeah, it's exciting to watch, and I was excited for it.
I think they should do it a series, though, because just like they should do it at Williamsport with the Little League World Series. This is a one-off game, yeah, sure, but then it messes with the schedule with the travel day. I think it'd be cool to have it as a whole series there.
Yeah, that would be exciting. What do you think about that, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They gave the Yankees and the White Sox the off day on Friday to travel back to Chicago, but screw that. Give them the off day on Thursday, and then let them play the weekend through, and then give them an off day on Monday.
Yeah, and have I think it was Fox, the broadcasting game, have Fox do the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and again, more fans, more viewership.
Yeah.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't actually think about that. But, yeah, because I think this year it's going to be the Cubs, or next year it's going to be the Cubs and Reds. And they said, I think it was the game's Thursday, then they're going to have an off day again on Friday, then Saturday and Sunday they'll return either, I can't remember now, it was either Chicago or Cincinnati. But, yeah, definitely a great idea. Do you guys have any, what has surprised you guys the most about this season?
There's a lot, honestly. It surprised a lot of us. Good.
No, I was just going to say the first thing that came to my mind was how quick, stadiums got back to 100% capacity. I think that was really the most surprising thing overall.
Yeah, off the field, in terms of off field, yeah, definitely.
I'm just saying it was sport, man.
Yeah, as a whole, yeah. I think the sudden rise of the no-hitter was kind of crazy because, it went from being something that we saw once every couple of years or maybe twice in a couple of years to now 8, which is unheard of. I think the last time I had was the 1800s, which is crazy because of how different the game was. I mean, the fact that we had so many in a row, in 4 weeks in a row, we had a 4 no-hitter stretch. It was great. First of all, it's great for the podcast when that happens. It's awesome to talk about. But I think the no-hitters and honestly how competitive the NL West has been. Like we said it in our preview show, like this is going to be Dodgers and Padres throughout, and the Giants will hang tough. But we didn't think that the Giants were going to be a first place team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean the Cubs fire sale even, because we thought the Cubs were going to be hanging around as well.
What a crapshoot the NL East has been.
Oh God, yeah.
Just
the Red Sox coming back and looking like their old self up until recently. There's just a lot that happened this year that you sit back and say, you know, never would have expected this in February.
Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, all
sticky
that.
substances.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, who would have thought we'd have sticky checks?
Yeah.
We actually had Spider Tech, and man, that stuff is sticky.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, speaking of the spider tag, I think was it one night. It was a baseball. It was Sunday Night Baseball, and I think Alex Rodriguez was showing like how sticky the spider tack is, and it was like he was literally staying on his finger for a long time. It was interesting how that worked, but it's what was that? Sorry,
it took Billy like 10 minutes to get off his finger. We bought a little container. Our buddy Chris did, and we went out over to the field and like, yeah, we'll make a little content out of this, have some fun for the YouTube, and we didn't even use it. It was too sticky, honestly. Like, it's like, how do these guys use it? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. It's like I said, the sticky substance was interesting too. I think the most surprising moment though is the Red Sox from bottom feeders to one of the best teams at one point. It seems like they do that a lot though. After winning a World Series, they're bad, good, and then they're back to being bad. It's kind of weird. But again, thanks for coming on, guys. Do you guys have a World Series prediction by chance?
Billy yelled one to me yesterday, and I've been thinking about it a little bit. I'm gonna have to say, that's tough because, like in the AL, it's such a wide open field. I'm gonna have to say, and it's gonna pain me to say this: the Yankees versus the Brewers.
Interesting.
And I got Brewers in 6.
All right, I got the Brewers versus the White Sox. Brewers in 7.
Okay. I didn't expect the White Sox because I expected either like the Red Sox or the Rays or, you know, the Yankees one is interesting too because they're just trying to fight to get into the playoffs or kind of stay around that area. I mean, if I had a World Series prediction, I'd probably play it safe and go the Giants and Rays or Giants. And I think I said the Giants and Rays originally. I don't know. The Red Sox recently, as you mentioned, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. And then, like I said, that AL East is pretty competitive, unlike the NL East. But I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. Hopefully my Cardinals, like I said, my Cardinals is kind of the same way your Mets are right now. They're kind of just average. And like I said, we're pretty much just dependent on our pitchers. So, again, hopefully we can get back to winning and stuff like that. So, again, as we end the interview, again, I can't thank you guys enough. Do you guys have anything in store for your podcast or anything else you want to add that we forgot to mention?
No, I mean, first of all, thanks for having us on. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Check out our YouTube, our Instagram, Twitter, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that stuff. Take a picture on everything. We have merch. It's all designed by us. Everything, all our content's original stuff. The shirt I'm wearing, I don't know if you do video, but the shirt I'm wearing, it's our breast cancer awareness shirt. 20% or 25% of proceeds go to breast cancer awareness and research and stuff like that. We have a military line, design line, where 25% of profits go to helping prevent veteran suicide. We have a lot of different charity merch. We have a Tom Seaver shirt that goes to Alzheimer and dementia research. Yeah, so just check out all that stuff, and hopefully you guys like our podcast just as much as they like yours.
That sounds great. Again, thanks for coming on. We got to do it again sometime, maybe before the World Series or after or during the playoffs sometime. That's definitely when baseball, in my opinion, is the most exciting. So, again, thanks for coming on. I'll put all the links down in the description down below. And, again, I can't thank you guys enough for coming on, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Alrighty, let's end the show with our segment, Questions from Instagram. Now, if you want to be part of questions from Instagram, don't forget to type in your sports question on Questions from Instagram, and most likely I will answer them and give you a shout out on the most recent episode. All right, so this first question comes from @FanOfTheGame, and he asked, which NBA superstar do you think will compete in the dunk contest? Sorry, let me rephrase that question again. What NBA superstar do you think is most likely will participate in the dunk contest? Well, we all know LeBron's not going to participate. We all know Kevin Durant's not going to participate. We all know the big time players aren't going to participate, but I could see maybe Zion Williamson participating, maybe a guy like Ja Morant who dunks a lot. You know what? I think Zion would be the same way LeBron. I don't think he would compete in it either. I'm going to go ahead and say Ja Morant would be the next superstar to actually, I guess he's not necessarily a superstar yet, but did win Rookie of the Year. I would say he'd be the next really big-time player to really participate in the dunk contest. I think Donovan Mitchell is officially done with this. He won back in 2018, but then he hasn't participated since. I guess Zach LaVine, yeah, he's kind of a superstar, but I think he's done. I don't think he'll be participating for a while, so I could see Ja Morant as the next big-time player participating. This next question comes from @Jason_Morris, and he asks, do you think J.R. Smith will actually play on the PGA Tour eventually? That's a good question. I think it's still too early to judge. We still don't know yet if the NCAA is going to allow him to actually play at NCAA or AT&T, I think is what it's called. But I think he's going to end up, or ANT or something like that. But I do think he'll end up playing golf. I just don't know if he'll play professional. I think it's still too early because, again, we don't know if the NCAA is going to allow him. I think the NCAA will eventually allow him, but at the same time, I don't know if he's good enough to actually participate on the tour. But again, you can get sponsor exemptions. There's a few ways you can actually do it as a celebrity, so I would not be surprised if he did that. But again, as actually a real-time professional golfer, it's still really yet to be determined, so I can't really predict what he's going to do. I just know I think he's going to end up playing golf in college. This next question comes from @Tim44, and he asked, when will you actually bring someone in studio? Well, it's a good question. We're actually working on something right now, so stay tuned. We're very close to actually getting someone in studio. So again, just with the way where I'm at right now and kind of with where I'm at, it's kind of a really small space. So it's going to be hard to actually bring someone in studio, but definitely stay tuned. And again, thanks for the question @Tim44. Thanks for the question @Jason_Morris. And thanks for the question @Fan of the Game. We really appreciate the questions. All right, so again, if you want to be part of questions from Instagram, just type in your sports question on the STP Pod Store. And again, you got to follow us on Instagram @sports_podcast. And I think you can check it on the Facebook story as well. So again, don't forget to check that. All right, that ends